Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. Here are your hosts, Bill Fraser and Tony Sarthou.
Welcome to Bill and Tony's Excellent Adventure in Music. I'm Bill.
And I'm Tony.
And we're going to explore our love for music by sharing some facts and our thoughts about what I consider to be some of the best albums from the most recent Rolling Stone Top 500 album list.
And today we're going to be talking about U2's Achtung Baby, released on November 18th, 1991. Bill, do you know what else significant happened on November 18th?
Well, I think, if I recall correctly, that you have twins that were born on November 18th.
Indeed. It wasn't 1991. It was 2008, but November 18th was the day that Bono and the Boys birthed Achtung Baby and Colleen birthed James and Ellie. So
There you go.
Happy birthday to Achtung Baby and James and Ellie Sarthou. So anyway, what happened? U2, Achtung Baby, sold 18 million copies worldwide. It was U2's 7th studio album, and it debuted at number 1. It spawned 5 singles: One, Mysterious Ways, The Fly, Even Better Than the Real Thing, and Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses.
So I know we both have a very different history with U2. So maybe let me start with, as you know, Tony, was not a U2 fan, and I was probably like Mr. Anti-U2 in high school. I didn't get excited about their music. I didn't really get what all of the fuss was about with, some of their earlier albums, and I really didn't listen to them very much until college. And really specifically 1991 was the year where U2 made an entry into my life, because my college roommate at the time was a huge U2 fan, and he loved playing 2 albums pretty much on repeat. He would play Rattle and Hum, and he would play Achtung Baby on repeat. That along with Nine Inch Nails, but that's another story. But those 2 albums were on a lot. So I got to hear U2 a lot, and I got to hear very different U2 from what I thought they were when, the early U2 was. And I think that's really very much the case from my understanding of it. So, Tone, I know that wasn't your perspective on U2. I think you come at it from a very different angle.
Yeah, I do, but it's not quite as a long history as you might think. I actually, our mutual dear friend who was the big U2 fan, I used to actually hate on U2 all the time.
So wait a minute. So you were hating on U2, and then you were giving me crap about hating on U2.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Are you suggesting you can't believe I was being hypocritical?
Shock of shocks.
Shock of shocks. So yes, I used to hate on U2, and I'll never forget what changed me. And I know this isn't a unforgettable fire pod, but when James popped in a cassette of Wide Awake in America into the Blue Sob one day, and just hearing Bad live on that, I was like, whoa, what am I thinking? These guys are amazing. And that was the song that changed me. It was Bad from Wide Awake in America. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. But if you're listening to this, you've probably heard it. It's amazing. And that's what changed me. So I was not a lifelong U2 fan. In fact, I was a hater. It's like, oh, Pride. Oh, great. Keep going on. Sunday, Bloody Sunday. All right, Bono. Awesome. But no, Bad changed it all for me. And that's how I came to U2.
That's interesting.
So there you go. You learned something.
So what changed it for me was one song on Achtung Baby. It was Ultraviolet. So that's the song that really, opened me up to U2. That song still gives me chills when I hear it.
It's a great song. So where are we at?
So from a tour perspective, I think you actually went to see that tour, correct?
I did that. So I hadn't seen U2 previously until the Achtung tour. And the Achtung tour, if we just start with some facts and figures, it ran from January of 92 and finished in December of 93. So almost 2 years in its entirety. It started in the US in Lakeland, Florida, and it consisted of 5 legs. The first 2 legs were indoor shows, and then the last 3 legs were outdoor stadium shows. Altogether, 5.3 million people saw the Achtung Baby tour, and the tour grossed $151 million. And the legs were US, Europe, and then the last leg was in Oceania and Asia, finishing in Tokyo, Japan.
So if I remember our recent discussion well, you actually had the opportunity to see one of the shows, but you didn't.
Oh, goodness me. Yes, so So one of my many regrets, but one that I definitely think of frequently, is the aforementioned James had an uncle, Uncle Tony. It turns out Uncle Tony, who was an usher at Madison Square Garden, or not an usher, he was a ticket taker. And that was back in the day when, it was paper tickets. So it was easy to fake taking a ticket, and, he could just let us in whenever we wanted to go. Theoretically, I never took advantage of that. Jamie apparently did. So anyway, Jamie called me up, said, "Hey, let's go see Achtung at the Garden." And I said, "No, I can't do it. Tonight's initiation night, and I'm the pledge educator, so I really got to be at this thing." So anyway, I skipped Achtung at Madison Square Garden to do frat boy stuff.
But you did see them in DC?
Yeah, so that was the missing the indoor shows, but then I did get to see 3 outdoor shows in the old Yankee Stadium, in DC at RFK Stadium, and in Philly at Veterans Stadium. And just a sign of how old we are, all 3 of those stadiums no longer exist.
All right. So what was your takeaway from that tour? I heard, really it was very different approach, a spectacle. And, Bono played a character during the tour, and it was very much about, the performance.
Yeah, so it was really strange. And you bring up that, a good point. It was so strange because coming on the heels of Rattle, and, keep in mind that we were, 20, 21, 22, however old we were at the time, it's not like we had a deep history and we didn't have the internet or whatever. So we just knew what we saw. And the last thing we saw was the Rattle and Hum movie. And, that's them in all their Western garb and singing traditional American music in the scenery of the Wild West. And then we go to Achtung, and the show is the Mr. Mephisto, or whatever he called himself, the character from The Fly. And it was jarring. And at the time, frankly, I didn't like it. I enjoyed what I had previously seen, and I was taken aback by the spectacle and all the stimulation and the audio visual. This was just something that was completely new, and
it was so
jarring.
ahead of its time. I mean, I really wish I had gotten to see that tour. Everything I've read, it was so ahead of its time as to how it was overloading sensory, and it was really a sign of things to come. I mean, basically, they were on the precipice of all the things that we were coming up upon, and they were highlighting that this is what's going to happen.
They were at least 10 years ahead of their time with the things that they were focusing on. They were doing basically cell phone calls on every show. It was like just the deluge of media that they were throwing at you, which is just a precursor to the doom scrolling that we all do every single day. And they saw it coming, and they presented it to us in concert.
And, just world history wise, 1991 is when the internet really kind of started becoming commercial. It's the year actually where internet became unrestricted, and people could actually interact on the internet. So that's really very early. It was Microsoft DOS 5 was the operating system at the time. It was a very different time in the world, and that tour and that album was very ahead of its time. So maybe let's talk about the album a little bit. So from a Shift perspective, everything I understand is that album was all about change for them. They were seen as the earnest, Irish band of Joshua Tree, and then they put out Rattle and Hum. You've got the Irish fans feeling one way about it, the American fans feeling another way about it. And again, you were probably more of a fan at the time. How did you feel about it when it came out?
So I loved Rattle, and but it was up and down, right? So the thing that I loved about Rattle the most was they do a version of Exit from Joshua Tree, which is really, on Joshua, it's really quiet and subdued, and it's a little sinister, but it's really quiet. And on Rattle, it rocks. It's just an absolute banger. So Exit on Rattle is what makes Rattle redeems it for me. But to say that it was maybe not critically well received, or maybe that some fans were disappointed, but disappointed to the tune of 14 million copies sold, right? So it was, maybe into context, it's not that disappointing, but it just was a little bit over
commercially,
the top.
some commercial success, but critically it was received pretty, brutally. I mean, the critics in the U.S. basically said, look, you have no right to be, doing, Americana, blues and classic rock and roll stuff. What do you know about about it.
And not only that, but look, the Rolling Stones made a living doing that music, so who's
Very
to
true, but
say?
it's a very different time. So
but but they did it much cooler. I mean, Edge was walking around with like some crappy fedora with a playing card in his hat. I mean, geez, like if you were trying to be a D-bag character, Edge was playing it, and I don't think he was going for it. I think he was being sincere, and that's at the root of the problem. I think is that they were sincerely exploring this music that was new to them, that they found exciting and interesting and whatnot. But gosh, they really came off as rubes. And
it's so funny because like I feel like that's happened a few times with them because and I think I've shared this with you. My daughter's experience with U2 is they hate U2, and they hate U2 because U2 is the band that their stupid album got forced onto my iPhone. Like, why? How can I get this stupid music off shuffle? Because all I do is shuffle my music, and this damn album that I don't want to listen to is there. And that wasn't the intent for U2. They were giving the damn album away, but it just was received so poorly. So it seems like they've just got this history of not thinking through some things and how people might perceive some of the things they're going to do very well.
Well, I guess that's the risk, right? When you're trying new stuff, if you're not completely calculated and market tested and whatnot, you're going to screw some things up. And what we can say is they were genuine, and whether or not it works, they weren't faking it.
Well, I agree with that, and I actually really like Rattle. For me, I go right to the opening. Helter Skelter is just, I think, awesome, and Desire. Those two tracks for me, like just awesome opening to an album. I really, really love those two tracks. But because of the reception they had in the U.S., because of how their Irish fans felt about it, they really felt like they needed to go back and reinvent themselves.
Yeah, the quote that really stuck with me was watching a clip of the last show that they did. I mean, it wasn't a part of the official tour, so it was just a small performance in Dublin at the end of the Rattle tour, and you can see in the clip that they're just physically exhausted, and Bono's parting words were, "We have to go away and dream it all up again." And a quote that I saw talking about that time was Bono thinking about the impact that Rattle had and the way it was received. And the quote that he said was that they left Ireland an interesting post-punk phenomenon, and they returned a not very good American show band. And then he asked the rhetorical question, have we become the enemy? And the answer, as Achtung Baby demonstrates, is yes. And they completely decided to put everything that they had done before away and pivot to something brand new.
And it's interesting how they did that, because they worked with producers they've worked with before so many times. They brought back Daniel Lanois, they brought back Brian Eno, they brought back Steve Lillywhite. These are people that they've worked with on multiple albums previously with, and to great success. But they really challenged them as producers to help them blow it up. And it was very much the same team, but they decided to do it differently. And I think that led to a lot of an interesting dynamic with the band. And I know they were in a really difficult place before Achtung Baby started recording. I think even some of the things I read was there was some question on whether they would even stay together as a band. So I think it's interesting that they came together and they just decided to just go at it completely different.
Yeah, well, they were going through different things, so Bono's experience is always different than everybody else's experience, because he is the voice and the face of the band. But meanwhile, Edge, his marriage was breaking up, and there was a lot of personal turmoil for him at that time. And meanwhile, you've got Larry and Adam just doing what they do, and they're comfortable doing U2 as they've done it. So they were in a place where they weren't looking for change. But meanwhile, Bono and Edge are in different emotional places, different places musically, and just feeling like they needed to do something completely different. So you've got some conflict there just within the four members.
And, both Lanois and Eno are incredibly prolific. Lanois has worked with Dylan, he's worked with Neil Young and Peter Gabriel, Robbie Robertson from the band, just incredibly prolific producer. And Eno is the same. He's worked with U2 extensively. He's worked with Bowie extensively. He's worked with, more recently, Coldplay. play, and he's actually quite an artist in his own right. In having an album on Rolling Stone's top 500 list himself, and Here Come the Warm Jets. And it is a really interesting listen. It's a really unique album. So if you haven't listened to it, I would really recommend it. But they go and they decide to record at a different location to start. So why?
Well, so they decided to go to Hansa Studios in Germany, and besides whatever might be happening in the world, Hansa is a legendary recording studio, is a place where Bowie recorded multiple albums, and he brought other folks there to record as well, including Iggy Pop, where Iggy did his best received work. But then at the same time, you've got what was happening in Germany in 1991 as they were recording.
So the band's in Germany. They're all the sentiment of the wall coming down, and unification, and the band is fighting. They're not getting along very well. I mean, from everything I understand, the early sessions were very much conflict, and it's such a dichotomy that the first track that comes out of that album, and the first thing that came out of those Hansa sessions, is the song One. It's really about unifying and coming together, which is, I know maybe not your favorite track, and maybe you feel it's overplayed and a little too commercial, but it's a beautiful track.
Yeah, but it's not a surprise, right? Because it's actually it's when they found their collective voice in this new environment. They're in Germany, and they're basically stuck there. They're trying to write songs and nothing's working. But part of the reason they're there is, because of all the change and upheaval and all that. And actually there's a funny story where, as the wall's coming down, they go out to, some site where, they want to celebrate with the people, the tearing down of the wall. And then they look around and everyone's mad. And they realize that they were at a site where people wanted to keep the wall up. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's a metaphor for the whole process, but here they went looking for something new for inspiration musically, and then similarly they went to the wall looking for a celebration, and they found the walls, people who still wanted to keep the walls up. So that's, to me, kind of symbolic of what was happening in these sessions.
So the quote that stands out to me from the whole research that I've done is the Bono quote about the fly, and if you haven't listened to the album, it's a spectacular album, but the fly is really kind of the heart and soul of that album from what they were going for intent wise. And Bono's quote is that the fly is the sound of four men chopping down the Joshua tree.
And it couldn't be more spot on. It's like you hear that track and you're like, you don't even recognize who these guys are.
Who is this band?
Yeah. And that's definitely, you could definitely see how the German influence kicks in there, because at the time the German club scene was electronic music, and the kind of sound that you hear all throughout this album, but particularly on The Fly, and it's a complete departure from Rattle.
So let's talk a little bit about that year in music. So I'm you and I were both in college. We're both 20 in 1991, and looking at what came out that year, just some of the albums that I remember listening to, but there are also great albums. Nevermind came out that year. You've got obviously Achtung Baby. You've got Pearl Jam 10 came out that year. The Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out that year. You've got Lenny Kravitz' Mama Said came out that year. Soundgarden, Bad Motorfinger came out that year. So you've got a lot of really rock-based stuff that came out that year, and specifically the grunge stuff was coming out. So you two went in a very different direction than that with Achtung. You've also got a lot of things, like the Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory. You've got Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. So you've got a lot of really interesting different things that came out that year, and that album really is unique. I mean, they were ahead of the curve with some of the things they were doing there.
So I'd say yes, for sure, when you're thinking about American music. But earlier you mentioned your roommate who was listening to Rattle and Achtung all the time was also listening to Nine Inch Nails.
Yep.
And I feel like that time period, Head Like a Hole was played over and over again.
100%.
Exactly when Achtung came out. And to me, I hear a lot of that when I listen to Achtung.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And the other stuff that I remember being just inundated with, you can't go to Rutgers and have lived through 1991 without hearing that Spin Doctors album about 1,000 times. So I think we talked a lot about the context. I think we talked about the tour. Why don't we maybe move into our song draft?
Oh, the song draft. Bill, what's a song draft?
So Tony and I have decided that rather than ranking our albums tracks and just giving you a boring, we think this is first, we think this is second, we're going to compete with each other every week, and we're going
Wait,
to go
Bill?
head to head.
A competition?
A competition, Tony. A competition. We're going to go head to head every week, and we are going to alternate picks. Whoever picked the album, the other person gets to go first, and we draft our songs, and we will have a roster of songs, and I will beat you every week.
So this is our first pod, so I'm going to share with our audience just the history of the competitiveness between me and Bill. Bill, do you have any idea what I think of when I think about me and you?
Oh, I know exactly. I know exactly what you think about. You think about a race in high school. You think about us in gym class and you beating me like every single time in a race, and then we bet on it, and I beat you.
We bet a pizza at Old Silver Tavern for lunch, and Bill beat me going away. So
I smoked you.
So basically, if he's got some stakes, if he's got a prize, if he's got motivation, then Bill's a different competitor. So the question to you listeners is, who are you going to vote for? Because that's going to motivate Bill, and is it going to get him over the top, and is it going to be able to have him beat me?
Well, let's just see how it plays out. So,
all right,
you picked Achtung Baby, so I get first pick.
All right.
We alternate picks until we get to the last track. Obviously, whoever goes first gets to pick the extra track if there's an extra track, but it's the last track, so it doesn't really give anybody an advantage.
And how do we determine a winner? Do we have
Well, I think that'll be obvious. I think any person listening is going to just be able to identify who wins, and I'm going to say maybe not every time I'll win, but I think I'll win most.
But how are the listeners going to inform us that I've won?
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll just ask them to respond in the comments to our pod. Maybe we can put up a little blog post on our website. We'll figure it out. We'll put something in the show notes to let everybody know how to let us know.
Okay, so it's important, folks, that you respond and let us know who you think we won. This is really, really critical for me and Bill. So we really appreciate you responding either on the socials or on the email or whatnot. So thanks a lot.
I think we'll put a survey in the show notes. I think that's what we're going to do.
All right, cool.
All right, so Achtung Baby, first up. So I get to pick first. I think you know where I'm going. I am going right to the best track on the album. My favorite.
Congratulations on selecting one as your first pick.
No. I am picking Ultraviolet, Baby, 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 Light My Way as my number one song.
Well, you got the best track. That's also my favorite.
And I have to say, just from a track perspective, the line in that song that I always, I just think is awesome, a brilliant line, and I always remember is the line, "Feel like trash, you make me feel clean. I'm in the black, can't see or be seen." I always think of that line when I think of that song, and I just think it's brilliant.
I don't know, how much of this is true and how much of it is fable, but supposedly Bono wanted to know how many times he could say baby in the song.
Well, there was a story that basically they were chuckling during recording it that Bono had never said baby in a song before, and he said baby about 1 million times in that song, and it worked.
Indeed, it worked. So let's see, where am I going to go with my first pick? So Ultraviolet was was far and away my number one choice. I think I'm going to go with the sixth track. It's So Cruel, and it's not necessarily a well-known track with most folks, but for U2 fans, it is pretty well regarded. U2.com survey of U2 fans had that listed as the third favorite track of survey respondents. So I always thought that was, sort of my secret special song, but apparently it's not. It's pretty well regarded amongst U2 fans. So I'm going to go with So Cruel.
So I've really thought about this one, and I'm going to have to go with One as my number 3 song. I think it is a brilliant song. It is a beautiful track. It's all about harmony. I'm all about harmony, and and it's one I practice every night on the guitar. I'm terrible at guitar, but I love practicing, and I try to play it every night.
Yeah, so we didn't get a chance to talk about that about One. So I'll just mention here. one of the things that I learned about one was that we covered how it was the first song that they really worked out for the album, but it wasn't the first song they worked on. And it turns out they were working on Mysterious Ways, and they had some parts of it. And Bono wrote a bridge for Mysterious Ways, and it didn't quite work. They liked it. They really liked the way it sounded, but it didn't work in the song. But they said, we need to do something with this. And then they started noodling on that bridge. And it was that Mysterious Ways rejected bridge that ultimately became one.
That is a great fact.
All right,
so you're up at pick number 4.
So I'm up. So I think I'm going to go with one of the other singles from the album. I'm going to go with Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah. It's just a good radio song. It's just a well-crafted song. It's nothing, I don't think it's anything incredible as far as teaching you about the human condition or insight into what it means to love or whatever, but it's a great song. And
I do love the line in that song. You're an accident waiting to happen. You're a piece of glass left there on the beach. Love that line.
Great line. All right.
So that leaves me up at number 5. I am going to take The Fly. It is an excellent song. It is the heart and soul of the album, and I have to take it sitting there at number 5.
That's where I was torn between The Fly and Horses. So I think you did well there. So The Fly to me is I don't know if we're going to talk about the album in total, but like for our younger listeners, albums used to come in vinyl and they had sides, and oftentimes there was a lot of thought put into where tracks fell on the side on an album and whatnot. And when I look at the 12 tracks for Achtung, I really see parallels, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, Bill, but like to me, The Fly is the lead track on the second side, and The Fly sonically echoes the lead track on side A, Zoo Station. The Fly is far superior to Zoo Station, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But I think that The Fly is really the lead track for the album, even though it's number 7.
Wholeheartedly agree.
So well done on The Fly. All right, so now it's back to me. So this is where it gets a little tricky on the draft.
It is pretty tricky. Don't mess it up here, Tom. Don't mess it up.
Do we go with what do we stay true to ourselves?
You're gonna get it wrong. I know you're gonna get it wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna get it wrong. I know that I'm gonna do all right with Mysterious Ways.
You're killing me. Mysterious Ways.
I never dreamed I'd take Mysterious Ways this early. It's a song that I've heard so many times, and frankly, I'm a little bored by it, but objectively it's a really good track, and I feel like I'm getting the good tracks that I don't love, but I think that I'm getting good tracks, so I'm gonna go with Mysterious Ways.
It's a great pick. At sitting there at number 6, that's a great pick. It is a great pop song, and it was a great album, a great radio track. So I think it is a really good pick there. I'm gonna go to probably my favorite song that's left on the album with Acrobat, which I love that song, and I specifically love the line, I must be an acrobat to talk like this and act like that. Love that just imagery and love that line.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. That's my favorite line on that song too, and it's really one of my favorite lines on the whole album. And to me, that's Bono acknowledging the public persona and the outspoken person and public figure that he is, but at the same time also the fact that he's a rock star, and the image that I always think of is him taking a private jet to the Vatican to meet with the Pope to talk about AIDS relief in Africa. To me, that encapsulates Acrobat.
Well said. All right.
Oh, so it's me. So I'm sitting there talking about your songs. Jeez.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you're getting excited because I'm winning. There you go.
That's a bad sign, I have to admit. All right. So now it gets a little tricky. I've got 2 songs that I'm trying to decide between. I think
There's only two choices here, so it's
Yeah, it's that is true. So I think I'm gonna go with "Love Is Blindness," the last track on the album. And I don't know. I guess maybe I'm balancing out the poppy tracks with the Wild Horses in Mysterious Ways with the last tracks on side A and B, was So Cruel and Love Is Blindness. Both of those tracks are about love lost or love gone wrong, and Love Is Blindness is very acutely about Edge and the dissolution of his marriage, and it's pretty heartbreaking,
it
and
is a
it's
heartbreaking
yeah,
song. I agree.
and
It's a beautiful track.
it's beautiful. So I'm gonna go with Love Is Blindness.
That is where I would have went. I am going to follow that up with Even Better Than the Real Thing, which is another really good poppy kind of track. Maybe didn't get as much radio play, but a great poppy kind of track on that album.
All right. Well, I'm glad you went there because you left me with the one that I wanted here in this spot, which is Until the End of the World. On just listening, on your on your headphones, it's a pretty good song. It's got a pretty good guitar riff. But what I always visualize is every single time I've seen them in concert. I've seen U2 at least 20 times, and 20 times over 20 plus years. And every single time they perform this song, Bono and Edge do this super homoerotic, little dance where, Bono is singing and thrusting, and Edge is, thrusting his guitar, and they're like 2 feet from each other or 2 inches from each other, and it's really bizarre, but they do it every single time, and I don't know, I'm kind of into it. So Until the End of the World.
All right. Well, a little personal history with the song and a good choice. It's the song I would have picked next. So where we are left here with is the dregs, to be very honest, in my opinion. I don't like either of these tracks. Candidly, and I know we're not doing the tracks that we would cut from the album, but I would cut both of these tracks from this album. I think they don't add anything to the album.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if this was a 10-track record, we'd be very pleased. It would be Achtung Baby, no skips. But instead,
I agree. So I'm gonna go with this is hard. I'm gonna go with Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World, even though I really can't stand the song. I can't stand the whole concept of the song. Drunk guy trying to throw his arms around the world, being outgoing and friendly and loving on everybody. It bugs me. I just don't like it.
So I think that you did well here, lesser of two evils. And what puts Trying to Throw Your Arms Over the Edge is, the edge, so to speak, is the line, woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. In a lame song, that's, a pretty funny lyric.
It is a funny lyric. I will give it that.
So that leaves me with Zoo Station, and the less said about Zoo Station, the better.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say about Zoo Station is at least it's not a particularly long song.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So, all right. So
All right.
that wraps up the song draft, and let me just give us a quick recap of where we landed. So I got to pick first, and my draft was Ultraviolet at pick number 1 at pick number 3, The Fly at pick number 5, Acrobat at pick number 7, Even Better Than the Real Thing at pick number 9, and Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World at pick number 11. I think that's a pretty solid draft, Tony.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. This is a great album. It's in your top 20. So
It's hard to go wrong. I love this album, so I agree. So your draft, equally great, but maybe not as great as mine. Tony at number 2 got So Cruel. At number 4 got Wild Horses. At number 6, Mysterious Ways. At number 8, Love Is Blindness. At number 10, Until the End of the World. And the bane of his draft, Zoo Station.
I feel like I got the emo version of the draft here.
You did. You really did. You got the very, very sensitive version. This is you're showing your sensitive self here.
Oh boy, this is going to be fodder for Ellie to make fun of her emo dad.
Yeah, wow.
All right. So do we do grades or?
So I think maybe we should talk about where I rank this.
All right, yeah, that's a good idea.
So this was on the Rolling Stone Top 500 list, and Rolling Stone for the 2020 list ranked it at number 124 on their list. For the 2012 list, it was number 63, and for the 2003 list, it was number 62. And for my list, it is number 15. So
Wow.
it is firmly in my top 20. I think it's a brilliant album. I think they achieved exactly what they were trying to achieve in reinventing themselves. And I really think they did so in a really creative and unique way. And that's what stands out for me in this album.
All right. Well, I think that you hit it on the head. It's very difficult to when you've sold as many millions of records as they had up to this point, to completely reinvent yourselves and do it successfully is, it's not something that a lot of folks are able to do. And it's a credit to them. It's a credit to their team. And we're all better for it.
All right. I think we've hit on all of the things that we wanted to. Did we miss anything this week, Tony?
If we did, we'll add it in post.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. I will definitely look forward to seeing your responses in our song draft and see everybody feeling who won it. I'm hopeful. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'm going to win week 1, but we'll see.
All right. Well, thanks, Bill. So I guess we'll see everybody here next week. Do we know what we're going to be talking about?
Next week is episode 2. We're going to talk about Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory. I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's a great album. It
All
is
right.
a brilliant album.
Well, then tune in, folks. If you're like me and haven't heard of Hunky Dory, tune in for episode 2.
All right. Thank you for listening.
So long.